On YouTube, there's a lot of material about Shakespeare. People talk about Shakespeare plays, but I feel like there is some room uh, to deal with the problem of how difficult Shakespeare is for an average reader, someone who's not used to reading books, someone who has maybe English is your second language, or maybe you're in school and you're not a big reader of literature. You maybe your talents are in other areas, in music or athletics or engineering or science or math, but you've never been a great reader. And I feel like there's some room for some explanation about reading Shakespeare. One thing I find in many of the Shakespeare videos is that they're made by people who are excellent readers. They've been reading their whole life. They just, they just they like a challenge and they can read quickly and absorb things very fast. They're just natural in language and words. But for people who this doesn't come so easy. I mean, certainly they know how to read, but they never read books or never really looked at plays. But for some reason, at this time in their life, they want to come to terms with Shakespeare. They've heard a lot about Shakespeare. Is it true? Is he so great that everybody says he's so great? And they want to find out what Shakespeare's like. Now, you can read a summary of Shakespeare, and that might help you for pass your test. But you're not getting Shakespeare. So you want to do it the honest way. You really want to read Shakespeare, understand it as much as you can, and really determine for yourself, is this guy good? What's everybody talking about? Another thing, if you're one of those expert reader people, this video is not for you. This is for average people. This is for people who know how to read, but maybe they read the news and they read topics in their own areas of expertise, but they don't read books. They watch television, they've seen movies, but they're just their breadth in literature is average. So this is for you. I'm going to tell you two things that I think are very important for a person in this position. So you're coming to terms with Shakespeare, and you might be self-conscious about it because you've always heard of it and it's a little bit intimidating. And there are many difficult things in Shakespeare. Number one, the language is extremely different than today's language. There are words that Shakespeare used in his time that are not used today. There are words in Shakespeare that are used differently than the way we use the words. The Elizabethan society during Shakespeare's time is very different than our society. So people thought differently. Also, the way that they made the plays was much more different than the way that, say, we make movies. So those are really real things that are going to trip you up. So the thing I want to stress is that when you read the play, I want you to just concentrate on the plot and the characters. The plots are complicated. The plots are an art all in themselves, and the characters are an art all in themselves. So if you can just get the plot and the characters, you've got it. That's all you need to do. You are in an elite group of people who have completed a Shakespeare play. That's our goal, to get the plot, get the characters, complete the play. So your teachers might talk about symbolism. They might talk about foreshadowing. They might talk about Elizabethan times. They might talk about Shakespeare's life. They might talk about the printing of the plays and the folios, and they might talk about iambic pentameter, and they act like iambic pentameter is some key to the play. It's not. For a first-time reader, you don't need to know any of these things. Throw them out the window. If you're a first-time reader, just get the plot and the characters. Just concentrate on that, okay? The second time you read it, the third time you read it, then maybe think about those other things. But there's a high level of complexity to the plot. And I'll tell you something about teachers. I know some people who became teachers, and teachers, when they were in school, they got A's in the subject. Say a literature teacher, when they took literature in school, they got A's. They got A's. A. I mean, they just loved this classroom. They loved the discussions. They loved their teachers. They loved everything about it, and they surpassed everyone. And that's why they wanted to become a teacher, because they're so excited about this subject that they do so well in. But you're an average person. You don't get A's in literature. You struggle in literature. And these teachers, they don't really get you. Okay? Because they never had a problem reading. They loved all the reading. So they might be trained to help you, or they might make an effort to be helpful, but they really don't get you because you're so average. And so I'm sure, if you're think about if you're an expert in some field and some average person comes along in your field, you don't really get them. You'd probably rather spend time around people at your own level. And so it's the same with teachers. And another thing about Shakespeare is films have one storyline going through, but in Shakespeare there's always another storyline weaving in and out of the main storyline. The second part that I want to emphasize is that the method that I use to do this. What you want to do is you want to first you get the text of Shakespeare. I use the Pelican Penguin Shakespeare. There's a lot of authoritative sources for this, and you should be able to find one. Then what I do is I like to watch the play while I read the text. Okay, now the reason why I like to do that is because I can't read Shakespeare off the page. I just can't do it. I've tried it. It just doesn't work for me. And the reason is that I see the people, I have the characters speaking, the name of one character speaking, and then another character speaking, and they just kind of blend together for me in my mind. I've got to see the characters. I've got to see the costumes. I've got to hear the different voices. I've got to see the way they stand on the stage, and I've got to see their movements. So I can't read it right off the page. You could just watch a version of Shakespeare, but the problem with just watching them is that the words come too fast, and I can't keep up with what's going on. I hear something that I don't understand, and yet they're on to the next dialogue and the next dialogue, and I can't keep up. So I get frustrated with that. So with my method, where you watch and read at the same time, you get all of it together. Now, there's more than one way to do this. What I do is I get the text that I have, and then I get a BBC version of Shakespeare. Now, then from my public library, I'm able to access something called Canopy. And Canopy has many Shakespeare plays that you can watch, and they're done by the BBC, and they're excellent quality. The best part about these is the actors are excellent, and I love the quality of the production. But there is a problem with them. They were filmed, some of them in the 80s and 90s, and the resolution on the internet is pretty poor. But the acting is excellent, and it's also very close to the original text. Now, of course, you could just get a cinematic version and turn on the closed captions, turn on the English captions, and then follow it and pause it and play it. That's possible. But I like to read the text off the page, because then I feel like I read it. And then you really I just feel like it's more authentic than the cinematic version, where they change scenes and they leave out many things. Now, in my method, you're going to play it watch a scene, follow, and then pause a scene, read the text, play it, pause, read, play, pause, read, and then you can, after you start getting used to it, it's very slow at first, but once you start getting used to it, you can make it further, and soon you might start to learn, you might start to pick up on the language, and you won't have to pause so much. But that's the way I do it. But it does take a while. So so if it's a 2.5 hour play, it's going to take you twice as long to get through it probably. And also be very aware of of your level of concentration when you're watching, because for me, sometimes I can only watch for a half an hour, and then I realize that my concentration, I'm losing the concentration, I'm losing all the characters, I'm getting disconnected from the plot. Your first reaction might be thinking, this is stupid. But it's actually that you're overloaded. You're so overloaded with information and that you can't handle it. And so you kind of disconnect from the play. So you got to stop at that point, end your session, come back another time. I wait 24 hours, pick up again and get through the play. So you slowly get through the play. It's going to take a while. So by the time I end, I have a thorough understanding of the play. I grasp the plot. I can think about the characters. I have a distinction between each of the characters, and I have an appreciation for the language. It's very gratifying to finish a Shakespeare play and have a thorough understanding of it. And after that, you should be able to deal with any of the things that come up in your class. And I've used my method to watch at least 30 plays. And even today, if I watch it again, I still like to do the same method. Have the text, watch the play, and pause, pause and play, and pause and play. I still use the same method when I watch Shakespeare. So that's my method. I hope I hope you're successful in reading Shakespeare. For me, it was a monumental accomplishment in my life. It adds to my appreciation of playwrights and writers and literature and Shakespeare's genius.